Cyclops. Greetings, good morrow, or good night, my friends. It is DM Dungeon Mastery back again with yet another 2014 creature stat block breakdown. So we're gonna jump into the Cyclops here. The Cyclops is pretty much a carbon copy of a base 2014 hill giant with the added singular ability slash special trait that it has, which is poor depth perception. But alas, we shall jump into it either way and just go over it really quickly. It's a huge giant, chaotic neutral, armor class of 14, hit points 138, a speed of 30 feet, so the huge giant walks at the same speed and stride as a normal human, apparently. I am changing that, and I swear, I promise to all of you, I am updating my giant stat blocks. It's just going to take me a little bit because I've already done like 4 or 5 of them now. 5 of them, something like that. Let's get into the ability scores. We have a 22 strength, 11 dex, 20 con, 8 intelligence, 6 wisdom, 10 charisma. Those seem good to me. Passive perception is incredibly low with an 8, so you could use this monster against a lower level party as a tool to teach them that they cannot fight everything and they have to sneak around some things. This is a good learner creature. I actually did use one of these against a lower level party that it would have obliterated if it fought them, and I kind of made it clear that they needed to sneak around it. Anyways, it speaks giant, but they are supposed to speak common and orc also, according to their lore. Then again, we move into the abilities now. It has a single ability, which is poor depth perception, which I actually like it. It's flavorful, it's funny. The Cyclops has disadvantage on any attack roll against a target more than 30 feet away, so that's anything that it uses. If it somehow has throwing axes, the rock throw, anything, it's at disadvantage if it's more than 30 feet away. So that concludes the traits. We move into the actions, and yes, oh yes, you see it just as well as I do. They make 2 great club attacks, and they can throw a rock. And Cyclopses have a lot of really cool, really brutal, really effed up lore. I'm still trying to break my streak of not break my streak of cussing for the first time on the channel. I do wish I could cuss, but YouTube is a very creatively stifling website, and if you say one bad word, you could not get monetized. So I'm trying to get good at not swearing on my videos, but I want to. I really do want to. I might have to just start waiting until the middle of the video to put emphasis on things that make me mad. Yeah, so, it's got a great club and a rock, and that's about it. So let's get into my stat block, and I think you guys are going to be surprised because when I made my stat block, I made it a mission to not make the Cyclops a carbon copy of the hill giant. So I think you guys are going to like it. Let's get right into it. Alright, starting off with my first change. Poor depth perception is exactly the same. So my first change is clumsy and smelly. Cyclopses are clumsy creatures. I don't think they're more clumsy than hill giants. They might be on the same level as hill giants are in terms of clumsiness, but they are also smelly because they use untreated animal pelts that are essentially just decaying animals that they've probably just shucked and ripped all the fur and skin off and then just plastered it to their skin, essentially, with the gore of the creature that's remaining on the pelts. You're gonna see in this stat block, if you're a little squeamish to like descriptions of gore and things like that, this is a trigger warning for you, because Cyclopses are really, really vile and brutal. After reading some of their lore, they do a lot of really heinous things, especially to creatures that are much smaller than them. So let's get into it, shall we? The first one is distrusts magic. Cyclopses hate magic, and that's with a capital H. They hate it. If they perceive you as a spellcaster, they will specifically target you and focus you down in a fight. So if the party has a wizard or a cleric or anybody that can cast spells, they are in deep trouble and they need to be protected. Like, they are a very important person, because Cyclopses will maim spellcasters just to make sure that they can't cast spells anymore. And it's pretty violent. It's pretty vile what they do to spellcasters. So they have disadvantage on persuasion, intimidation, and deception checks. Most of the time, if a Cyclops sees that you're a spellcaster, I think it's implied that they will attack you on sight. But they could probably hold back their anger depending on what the party is talking to them about, perhaps. But they're not going to trust you. It's going to be very hard to get them to trust you. So let's move to the first unique ability that sets them apart from hill giants. So hill giants are very emotional creatures. They have these emotional outbursts. However, Cyclopses have an entirely different outlook on life. So I came up with this after looking at the wiki, watching an AJ Pickett video on Cyclopses. This is Cyclopean logic. So it says, when the Cyclops experiences a significant failure or setback, or in combat, such as missing with an attack, failing a saving throw, or being affected by a critical hit in combat, it immediately blames the nearest creature within 30 feet of it that it can see for its misfortune. The Cyclops must succeed on a DC 15 Wisdom saving throw, or be compelled to attack the blamed creature on its next turn. And then outside of combat, failures can happen too. So if it's outside of combat, they make a DC 15 Wisdom save, or they become hostile, essentially. So the reason why I put this on here is Cyclopses do not worship a god. On the wiki, it says they worship Grumsh, the one-eyed god that the orcs worship, but they don't really, because a lot of the other lore, that's a contradicting lore on the wiki. AJ Pickett stated that Cyclopean beings are, their entire religion, or their quote-unquote outlook on life, is luck. You either have good luck or bad luck. And they never take responsibility for their actions, and they always blame their bad luck on something else. Never them. Never anything they do wrong is their fault. It's always some other creature's fault. So let me give you a role-playing example here. If you wanted to just introduce a Cyclops, let's say the party's walking down a road. Okay, it's a dirt road that's going through the woods. It's not a main road. And a boar comes running out of the forest as the party hears as a Cyclops approaches, trying to attack and kill this boar because something happened. We'll say he chipped his fingernail, or he smashed his finger on accident, and he thinks the bad luck is coming from that boar, so he's chasing it, and the boar gets away. Well, now the Cyclops looks for the next thing, because if something gets away, they assume that, okay, well, that wasn't the source of bad luck, because I wasn't able to grab it and beat the bad luck out of it and get good fortune. So then they turn to the party members that are now standing there, and immediately they make another wisdom save, or they're compelled to attack the blamed creature. And you could even say if there's a spellcaster, they just auto-fail it and they start attacking. So how it works is, I know that was long-winded, but I like to give little roleplay help examples for people. So the first part of this is blamed creatures survive the attacks. If the blamed creature survives or avoids the attacks, the Cyclops no longer sees it as the source of bad luck and continues looking for the nearest weaker creature to blame. Or if the blamed creature is defeated, so if the Cyclops reduces a blamed creature to 0 hit points, it believes it has rid itself of the bad luck and gains advantage on its attack rolls, ability checks, and saving throws for the next minute or until it misses an attack, fails a saving throw, or an ability check. So you can see now there's like a Cyclops shuffle now. It's not just, you know, this plain creature stat block that doesn't really have a theme to it. Now the Cyclops' lore is directly embedded into the stat block for you to use. It's going to be quite a fun little thing, and it doesn't have to happen all the time. You don't have to make it happen every single time. It says such as missing with an attack, but let's just say like it triggers like once at the beginning of the fight, and then it's this fun game of cat and mouse where the party rogue has been declared as the reason that the Cyclops is having bad luck. So that's his target. He does not care about the fighter, he doesn't care about the barbarian, the cleric. He wants that rogue because that rogue is causing his bad luck. Yeah, that's a fun ability in my opinion. I think it's really chaotic, which is it lines up with their alignment, which is chaotic neutral. So that's a very chaotic trait to have. And then the final trait on the stat block, we're already through them all, even though I talked so much. So we got Cyclopean Strength. So it says a melee weapon attack deals 1 extra dive damage on a hit. It's already included into the attack, so that's just telling you why they deal an extra damage die. And then it says if the Cyclops scores a critical hit with a melee attack that does bludgeoning damage, attack rolls against that target have advantage until the start of that Cyclops' next turn. Cyclopses in a group are incredibly dangerous now with this ability. They can essentially mark targets for their allies by weakening them with the Cyclopean Strength. They crit somebody with the Great Club, and if they have advantage from defeating a blamed creature, they can snowball out of control pretty fast. So already they do not feel like hill giants at all. They're actually more dangerous than a hill giant, because a hill giant is savage from their never-ending hunger from Grolantor, and they are just these. They're savage from like a stupidity standpoint. Like they just don't seem to care. Whereas a Cyclops is more intelligent. They do understand more, but they also blame. They put the actual blame on creatures, so that makes them even more scary and dangerous if you think about it, because they're directly blaming something else for its misfortune, and they take it out on that creature. We're going to move into the actions, and I think you guys are going to like what I have in the actions too. Let's move on to the actions. Alright, here we are in the actions, DM Dungeon Mastery style. Let's break this down. So, there's a lot of repeated actions from the Hill Giant, because I think they made sense to do, but you'll see there's some differences that makes them feel a bit more different, because Cyclopses are described as having like literal brute strength to the point that it's like scary. Nothing on like the level of a cloud giant or a fire giant or something, but they definitely overpower hill giants in terms of strength. So it's multi-attack. The Cyclops can make 2 attacks with its Great Club or 2 attacks with its Fist Slam. It may replace one of these attacks with a Stomp attack. So yes, Stomp is on the Cyclops stat block too, don't worry. I have to fix that text there because I copied and pasted the multi-attack thing twice on accident there. But let's get into the Great Club here. So it is a Great Club, but it's a little bit stronger than a Hill Giant Great Club. So it's a huge Great Club. It's got plus 10 to hit, 10 feet of reach. It does 4d8 bludgeoning damage instead of 3d8. And then once per turn, if the creature is huge or smaller, the Cyclops can push the target up to 10 feet to an unoccupied space if the target is not larger than the Cyclops. That's kind of redundant, I just realized after reading that out loud. I'll probably take that last part out. But yeah, now the Cyclops, when he hits you with his Great Club, it kind of sends you moving a bit. He can push you around, so if you're fighting a Cyclops on a cliff, really terrifying. It's terrifying with a giant too because they could throw you, but the Cyclops' actual main weapon attack that does the most damage is gonna be able to push you around and shove you around. So if you're fighting multiple Cyclopses, he could smack you behind him where his allies are, and now suddenly you're in a three-way triangle of Cyclopses, and you're gonna get completely smashed into dust, essentially. Moving on to the boulder, it's your classic boulder. It's 4d10 plus 6 bludgeoning damage, and then the creature's larger, smaller, its movement speed is reduced by 5 feet until the end of its next turn. That's all well and good. I changed the Cyclops' fist slam, so we're going to move to that next. So it's not just a fist, it's a fist slam. I know, I'm really reaching on this one. So it's 5 feet of reach, does 4d6 bludgeoning damage instead of 3d6 like a normal giant would. If the creature is larger or smaller, it is temporarily crippled, reducing its speed by 10 feet until the end of its next turn. So if he takes his fist and he slams it on you, it cripples you in a way. Cyclopses will maim people so they can't run away. They will hobble you so you cannot run away, especially if you're like a slave or a spellcaster. I think that's in line with their absolute sheer brutality. That is why I gave them, this little caveat to their fist slam attack. So even if they're disarmed, they're pretty dangerous and brutal. Moving into the stomp, it's the same old stomp. If they hit you, it does an extra d4 damage. So it's 4d4, and then the creature must succeed on a DC 18 strength save or fall prone under the weight of the Cyclops' foot. And that's going to conclude the attacks. This next attack is the Snatch, which I took out the one-hand reminder and I added a flavor text at the bottom. So it's the same Snatch, but if you don't know what it is, the Cyclops forces something within 10 feet of him to make a dex save as he's lunging in to grab it. If they fail the save, the Cyclops grapples them, and then you're restrained by the Cyclops. I changed the wording here so it's more in line with legitimate skill wording. So it says the Cyclops cannot grapple another creature with this hand or swing its two-handed weapons until this grapple ends. I reminded newer players that two-handed weapons can still be held in the opposite hand, they just can't be swung in the opposite hand. So he can put his great club over his shoulder while he's doing this, he just can't swing it as a weapon attack. So that is going to do it for the actions, but the bonus actions are quite different. There's a couple things in the bonus actions that we have specifically for spellcasters, and let's go ahead and hop into bonus actions. Okay, here we go into the bonus actions. So when I update my other giant stat blocks, a lot of things are going to get quality of life changes on them because they need them. When I did the hill giant stat block, I did it how I always did hill giants, but there's a lot of kind of dated text in there that I need to kind of clean up a bit and make it more in line with the rules. So we have Crush. The Cyclops squeezes it's supposed to say the grappled creature. I thought I changed it, but I didn't. So anything that says snatched is going to be changed to grappled. Cyclops squeezes the snatched creature, and then the creature takes 3d6 bludgeoning damage, but it remains grappled. So as he's holding you in his one hand, he can just start squeezing you when you make him mad, like you stab his hand with a dagger or something. Then next we have Smash, and this ability got a change, and it's going to get a change with all the other giants too, because it kind of makes sense, I realized, and it's falling behind for having an actual legitimate reason to use it, I realized. So the Cyclops spikes a snatched creature into the ground or an object nearby. So he's taking you and he's just slamming you into the ground by like tossing you as hard as he can, or he palms you into a building or the wall of the cave that they're in. So the creature takes 4d6 bludgeoning damage. The target must make a DC 18 con save, or they're stunned until the end of that creature's next turn. And then the creature lands prone within 5 feet of the Cyclops and is no longer grappled. So that's a lot more scary now that he can... I mean, picture it. There's baseball players that can throw baseballs at like crazy speeds, and like they can hit you and deal some serious damage. Alright, now imagine a giant 3 times the size of that baseball player throwing another human body into a wall with all the force behind it. Like, it's probably gonna stun them, or a real person would probably explode if that happened to them, but this is fantasy D&D, so it's at least gonna stun them. Like, yeah, that's gonna hurt pretty bad, but now it gives you a reason to actually use that instead of just, well, I don't want to drop him for 1 extra die of damage. I'd rather just keep crushing him over and over again. Being able to stun something is scary, because then when his next turn comes around and he has his great club attacks and nobody saves that person, and also imagine if that person is the creature that the Cyclops blamed. Oh yeah, Cyclopses are scary now. Alright, so we get into Fling now. The Cyclops clutches the grappled creature or held object tightly and tosses it through the air with a powerful throw. So a creature or object the Cyclops is holding is hurled up to 60 feet in a direction of the Cyclops' choice, and they take 1d8 bludgeoning damage for every 10 feet thrown, and they land prone. That actually should be 1d6, not 1d8, because I copied that from my Cloud Giant stat block. But if the target or object is thrown at another creature, that creature must succeed on the DC 18 Dex save 2, or they take the same damage and they're knocked prone. So keep in mind that that still goes with depth perception, poor depth perception. So if they throw them 60 feet, they throw them essentially like I would give the creature advantage on the save, because technically that would be like an attack roll or something. So I would give the person that he's throwing the guy at advantage on the saving throw. So the giant can, toss little creatures around. The next one is where the brutality comes back into play. Cyclopses are known to just straight up eat unruly slaves. So like if they have a bunch of slaves and let's say one of them's an old man and he collapses out in the field as they have them stitching sheep wool blankets for them just days on end, non-stop, barely any food, barely any water, and the old man collapses, well, the Cyclopses that are watching that are just going to walk up and they're going to pick him up and probably eat him in front of everybody else to scare them into this is what happens when you stop working. They're like that. Cyclopses are horrifyingly brutal, man. I seen that, and like I was watching that AJ Pickett video, and I was like, oh my god, that's just terrifying to think about. Like, they are so brutal and callous, it's crazy. Yeah, so that's Bite, and if the damage from Bite reduces you to 0 hit points, it does 68 piercing damage. If it reduces the creature to 0 hit points, you get bitten in half and swallowed or spat out by the Cyclops. So he has a choice if he wants to eat the other half that he still has in his hand. And then after that, you're obviously dropped by the Cyclops. I should probably put that in there. I'm catching my mistakes as I'm going through the video, but let's go to Crippling Crush. Now these last two grapple abilities are something that the Cyclops only uses, and they cannot use this on a creature that they don't perceive to be a spellcaster, because this is like, it's not that they physically can't use it, but they're not going to think to do that unless they are incredibly angry and they think you're a spellcaster. So two of these things are both for spellcasters. So the Cyclops with Crippling Crush, the Cyclops, seething with fury, savagely crushes the spellcaster's hands, aiming to destroy their ability to manipulate magical components. The spellcaster takes 5d6 bludgeoning damage. If this attack reduces the spellcaster to 0 hit points, the Cyclops tears off their hands and drops the creature within 5 feet of the Cyclops. Absolutely brutal and horrifying. Is it mean? Yes, but is it fitting of the Cyclops? Double yes. I mean, players that are lower level probably aren't going to be fighting a Cyclops, and if they are in the vicinity of one, they should probably run. You should let your players make history checks and know that Cyclopses are incredibly ruthlessly brutal, especially so to spellcasters. They hate magic users. And, well, we'll move to the final one. This is arguably even worse. Silencing Throttle. With a look of unbridled hatred, the Cyclops throttles the spellcaster's throat, attempting to silence their magical incantations. So it does the same 5d6 bludgeoning damage, but it's like your choice on what you want the Cyclops to target. If this attack reduces the spellcaster to 0 hit points, the Cyclops pulls out their tongue and drops the creature within 5 feet of the Cyclops. So, yeah, specifically it says they would try to crush their hands, hobble them, rip their tongue out. I didn't want to add they break their legs or rip their legs off or something, because I felt the stat block was already getting a little bit packed with stuff, but I think that fits. And then that's going to conclude all of the bonus action grapple abilities, and we're going to go into the final reaction from the Cyclops, and this is what makes it incredibly terrifying, especially in groups. And without further ado, we have the one final reaction that the Cyclops can do. It is called Mage Hater, not to be confused with Mage Slayer, the feat. Similar to that, but quite more terrifying. So this is an optional reaction. You can take this out if you think it's too much. I don't think it's too much, because Cyclopses are really weak at range. So this is kind of their thing. Like they're really brutal up close, and just this force of strength and savagery up close. But anyways, let me stop rambling. When a creature the Cyclops can see within 120 feet of it casts a spell, the Cyclops can use its reaction to move up to half its movement speed towards the spellcaster and make a melee attack against it. This movement provokes opportunity attacks. Alternatively, the Cyclops can make a ranged attack against the spellcaster. So I set the max range to 120 feet, which is the max range of the boulder, so that would be a disadvantage anyways. But yeah, so picture it like this. The party is observing the group of humanoids that the Cyclopses are holding as slaves to do their work with the sheep and making their blankets and their pelts. And they decide, well, we're going to go in the middle of the night and we're going to kill all 6 or 12 of these Cyclopses, because we're super high level and we can fight anything, DM. You can't stop us. Well, they go in and the wizard starts it off with a fireball, and as soon as he casts a spell and hits them with fireball, 6 of them retaliate because one of them starts yelling, "Spellcaster, mage!" And then they all immediately grab boulders, start charging at the target, throwing the boulders at the target. Or, even scarier, the cleric casts a healing spell. And then, the 4 Cyclopses that see that happen hit him with 4 boulders. That's the part where it's kind of like iffy. It's like, do I want to have this in the stat block, because that's like 6 Cyclopses can use this, but also at the same time they're tribal and they would react like that realistically according to their lore. So this one's optional. You can take this one out if you think it's too strong, but I think it fits their personality. They could potentially do 3 attacks in a round of combat if they activate Mage Hater. So blinding spells will be very important, because if they blind the Cyclops, I believe, I don't know how that would work if they blinded them. I guess you could say that how I would rule that is as the wizard casts like blind or something, the Cyclops and the Wizard can make it like a contested initiative roll to see who can react before the other. And then, you know, if the Wizard rolls higher, he casts blind, and then the Cyclops just can't see him, you know, cast that spell. But also, if they have a way that they could stealthily cast a spell, like with sleight of hand checks, they can get around it too. If they think creatively, they can get around it. That's like the intention with all of my multi-layered thought processes when I'm making these creatures. That's why it takes me so long, is I'm always thinking of like, okay, well, is there a counter to this? Can they fight it somehow? Can they get around it somehow? So yeah, that's the last big bombastic reaction of the Cyclops. I think it really differs from the Hill Giant because of its Cyclopean logic ability. And then everything else is obviously similar because they're huge giants and they should have huge giant abilities. I'm gonna make the huge giant economy better in D&D. I promise all of you. I'm here to save your huge creatures that are humanoid in stature. I'm gonna make them use these crazy size imposing abilities, but in a fair way. Firm but fair. That's how DMing should be. You don't want to kill your players, you want to challenge them. And there's always ways to get out of things with like sly tongue, with like bards and charismatic characters. So I'm just trying to make combat more fun, especially at higher levels. So Cyclops is now with my stat block, they scale pretty good. I think they could scale in the late game fairly easily, especially if you have a group of them. They're pretty dangerous. One of them now is a good boss fight for a group of like 5 level 6 players even, I think. I mean, they might be able to slaughter his health pool pretty quickly because he only has 138 health, but even 2 of them, maybe, you could do it with. Yeah, anyways, that's just me rambling. This is DM Dungeon Mastery, coming at you late at night. Join my Discord channel if you like the stat blocks and you want to download them for yourself. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching my videos. I appreciate you so much. You have no idea. I hate to ask, but if you could like the video, subscribe if you liked it. I'm trying to grow my channel. DM Dungeon Mastery, signing out.